Hello everyone, this is Dragothien. Welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms video. Today we're going to be talking about this guy right here, Cheok, CJ, whoever you want to call him. This is a commander that is one of the latest infantry commanders out, has some mysticism behind what his skills do. We have a mastery guide on him. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out and see what I thought about whenever he first came out. Well, this channel is all about real world combat, okay? How his skills actually perform in real world scenarios. His skills look really good on paper. In the real world, in real world combat, he doesn't really necessarily perform that way. Let's talk about it. Let's go over why that's the case. I'm going to show you some battle reports. I'm going to also show you some footage of what he's supposed to be doing really, really well, but doesn't necessarily measure up. And then we're going to have a conclusion at the end and figure out what's going on there. So let's stay tuned and jump right into it. Alright, so first off, this is Cheok. Again, we're going to be talking about what we can do to utilize him, because I'm starting to feel like Cheok doesn't really have a place in the current combat meta, and I have a feeling it's just because his skills, while some of them look really juicy and enticing, in real-world combat, they just don't function the way that you will need them to in the open field, because really, this guy is an open field commander. There's no rally specific skills on him. And really, again, the meta for infantry rallies right now is top tier, you got Pakal Herald, and then second tier, an Alex Herald or a Guan Herald or something like that is going to be your second tier infantry rallies. CJ is just not a part of it. Now, again, when you're looking at his skills, he has a really nice single target damage factor skill, which gets a little bit of extra damage if the target is under 30% health, which when I see stuff like that, I'm like, ooh, rally. That makes total sense because that will start triggering during the rally. But unfortunately, we're not rallying with him. We're not rallying with Cheok. And again, he's not necessarily going to be in that situation. So 30% or less troops remaining, traditionally, especially if it's going to be a fixed battle, right, where you've got Group A versus Group B, you're not really going to be able to rely upon getting this extra 300 damage factor. So to me, he's not really going to be using this extra part of the skill very often, or at least you can't plan on it. So really, this is a 1700 direct damage factor skill, and that's it, okay? Now let's go through the other skills, and I really want to focus on a couple of these. The second one in particular, 40% attack bonus, is very strong. It's very strong. The problem is it's not unheard of, and if it's by itself, which it is, we're going to go through the skills and I'm going to show you, 40% attack bonus is not that great, especially in KVK. KVK, you get tons of attack bonuses. Having a 40% attack bonus is nice, but it's not a game changer. It's not something, especially considering this is a commander that is one of the latest infantry commanders to come out. He's a wheel commander. He's supposed to be strong, right? You do have a 5% raw damage increased against Cav, but again, you take that extra 5% that you're doing to Cav and you take it away from yourself on archers. Archers can start to really rock your world when you're bringing out CJ onto the battlefield. Third skill is cool. I like it. It's kind of one-dimensional, and all the extra fluff around it is kind of a joke. So while on the map, you have a 40% chance to reduce your incoming skill damage by 50%. That's awesome. That can trigger once every, I think it's 4 seconds. This one, it says the ability can trigger once every 3 seconds. If you don't have the expertise, it's 4 seconds. If you have the expertise, it's 3 seconds, which is nice. It's really nice. But again, think real-world combat. Okay, think real-world combat. When we're talking about receiving skill damage, right? The regular, like if you're 1 versus 1ing, for instance, right? Like say you have Alex Cheok and you're fighting what you should be fighting, which is like a Saladin William or a Genghis YSG or something like that, right? The skill damages coming in towards you are going to be every 2 seconds. So you have primary skill, delay, second skill. That's 2-second delay, which means only one of those is going to get that chance buff. It doesn't have a duration. The way this works is if you receive a skill damage and this is off cooldown, you have a 40% chance to reduce it by half, which is great. The problem is, again, like we just said, with a normal army coming in and attacking us, they're going to cast the primary skill from the primary commander. You get your 40% chance on that one. If it hits and you get that half off on that one, the secondary commander is full damage. And if that primary commander does some kind of a damage modifier, which a lot of players are starting to really kind of get behind the fact that you put your damage modifier primary commanders first, and then you have your heavy hitters on the second to get that extra boost on top of what they're already providing, you're not going to get any difference. The second commander will give you maximum damage, full-blown damage. There's nothing that you can do about it. So with this in mind, again, the way this triggers, it doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't really do anything for you other than that one skill damage, because you're not going to get that next skill damage cycle until, 7 seconds or so, 6 to 7 seconds for that next rotation. And if for some reason you're getting swarmed, well, one of those skill damages getting half off is not really going to help you if you're getting swarmed and you're taking 6 skill damages to the face in the first 3 to 5 seconds. You're not going to get any reduction on that except for one of them. And when 5 or 6 skill damages are knocking you in the face right away, you're done. There's not much you can do anyway. So I think the actual usability of this skill, again, is not that great. You're not in real world combat. You're either getting swarmed or you're picking things off on the edges or something like that. And in both cases, you're not really getting that great of a value for an entire skill. And when this is expertised, you do have a chance, right, to trigger the sacrifice buff. So when we're talking about this incoming skill damage reduced by 50% and deal skill damage to up to 3 enemies in a fan-shaped area. It's a smaller fan, by the way. You got the fan-shaped area. Damage factor equals number of special sacrifice buffs multiplied by 50. We're about to get to the sacrifice skill, which is, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems with CJ or Chuck, whatever you want to call him. So again, even if you have maximum, so say you have maximum buffs of sacrifice on the 4th skill, which we're going to go over in a second, that gives you a 400 damage AoE, and it's also subject to the 15% target reduction like a regular normal 1800 damage factor AoE is. And again, this can trigger once every 3 seconds. Well, again, the way realistic combat works, I think the idea here was that, hey, this is going to go off every 3 seconds, and you're going to be pumping out 1200 AoE damage factor over the course of a skill cycle. Well, that's just not the case. If you're fighting a couple people, usually all their skill damage is going to be hitting roughly at the same time, roughly. And again, if that's the case, this is not triggering fast enough to warrant only a 400 AoE damage factor being like a really big deal. Again, if somehow you have people attacking you with one march, and then another march 2 or 3 seconds later, and then another march 2 or 3 seconds later, and then another march 2 or 3 seconds later, then yes, this will work just fine. And this is exactly how I think that they thought that this would work, is that every 3 to 4 seconds, this skill will proc, and you'll get an AoE damage buff, which is great and everything, right? It's awesome, but it doesn't work that way. It doesn't really work that way in the real world. You're getting swarmed, and it's usually happening all at the same time. Or, you DC'd and your march is going through a big ball of enemies, or, you are trying to fight, but you're trying to click your march to pull it back, and it doesn't happen quick enough, and you've got 5 or 6 people that you landed in the middle of, and they all go woof, right in front of you, right? That's just how the fighting works. There's not really a, okay, let's test it where, okay, we have 1 target hitting this, and we have 2 targets hitting this at 3 seconds afterwards. It just doesn't work that way. So this skill, while on paper looks pretty strong, in real world combat scenario, to me is an absolute joke. Because if you look at this, right, like everybody's like, well, but what about the skill damage reduction? The skill damage reduction is really good. It is. It really is. But look at Saladin. Saladin is a Season 2 commander. You can use him after 140 days. And you've got his 3rd skill. You have a 30% damage taken reduction all the time. All the time. I would much rather have 30% damage taken reduction permanently than have a 50% damage reduction taken once every 6-7 seconds. Like, it doesn't make sense to me to have that be like the banner moment for CJ, right? So let's go back to the 3rd skill. Again, this to me is not really working in real world scenarios fighting wise. The bonuses that you get from this are marginal at best, and they don't give you enough bang for your buck, in my opinion, for a 3rd skill latest game infantry commander that's out right now, September 2021. Number 4, Sacrifice. This is a skill that I just tested, and again, I've been testing it, using it in real-world combat, but I also just tested it using some battle reports, so I can show you why I came to the conclusion that I did while using him in a top-tier KVK. So, Sacrifice, this skill is basically giving you a 15% increased march speed all the time. That's great, I like that. You also have a 100% chance whenever this skill is maxed of dealing a 5% increased damage buff for 8 seconds when attacking. Now this is only for your march. This is not a damage debuff on the target. This is a skill damage buff for your march only. It does not give all your other marches that skill bonus. It's just for you, okay? Now it says, chance of dealing 5% increased skill damage for 8 seconds when attacking. That's a nice long duration. This effect can trigger once every 4 seconds and can be stacked up to 8 times. Okay, so obviously, quick mental math, right? You can stack it once every 4 seconds, and it lasts for 8 seconds, and it's a 5% buff. So 5% times 8 times, that's a 40% skill damage bonus when it's fully maxed out. Awesome. That's almost as large as YSG's at 50%, right? Well, again, here's the problem. In real-world combat, this takes a while to actually get cranking and going. All right, so your first skill cycle, you'll have about a 5, maybe a 10% chance, depending on how long it takes you to get to your first skill cycle. Your second skill cycle, you'll have a 15, maybe a 20% skill cycle or skill damage bonus from this skill. Your third skill cycle, you'll be about 30, maybe 35%, depending on how fast your rage is generating. And then finally, after your fourth skill cycle, yes, that's right, your fourth skill cycle, you will have a maxed 40% skill damage bonus, and it takes roughly 30 seconds, which I will again show you just a little bit with the battle report. So it takes 30 seconds for you to get your full 40%, and that's when you're going to start dealing your extra 40% damage, skill damage with your skills, right? And 40% damage goes to your 1700 damage factor here, your 300 damage factor here if it triggers, if you're targeting something that's less than 30%, and it goes up to your 400 damage possible factor here, which is, again, the only time you get to that 400 damage factor is if you are maxed out on Sacrifice. If you are in those first 4 skill cycles and you're proccing off Stalwart, you have an AoE of 100 going off, or 150, or 200. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. You don't get the 400 AoE until 30 seconds into a fight, and that has to be a consistent, permanent fight. You can't stop fighting in those 30 seconds, or else it starts back at 1 again. Again, in practice, this fourth skill Sacrifice does not fly. Now, what can you do to maximize your chances of getting this to work? You have to use AoE. So, in my testing, I tested it to where I had Richard with CJ, and then I tested it by using Guan and CJ. So the first test, and let's go ahead and just jump to these so that I can show you while I'm talking, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the AoE one. This is the single target one. So this one here, this is my Richard CJ Barb Patrol, and again, it's not based off of anything other than hitting a target. So the fourth skill, it doesn't matter if you're attacking a barbarian or whether you're attacking a player, it reacts exactly the same way. We go to the battle log, and again, the first turn you get nothing. Second skill, you get that 5% right off the bat. Okay. Third skill, same thing, or third turn, fourth turn, fifth turn, sixth turn, there's your 10% because we've stacked at that point. You had your 4 seconds of reduction, or your delay, your 4-second delay until it could proc again. Now we're on turn 6, and now we have 10%. Turn 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we have 15% on the first turn, and now we're at getting actual skill damage out on turn 12, which has a 15% skill damage bonus. Okay, cool. And again, this is with Richard having, hardly any rage generation. This is just your normal rage generation. Starting at turn 10, that's very rare for a lot of open field players. You're usually starting at turn 7, 8, maybe 9, especially if it's a support tree. You're starting usually around 8 or 9. If it's skill and you proc Feral Nature, if you have YSG involved or other rage generating skills, sometimes you can get as early as 6. But really, you're in this little 7, 8, 9 window. And again, if you're in the your second category here, you're only really going to be damaging with 10% extra skill damage. On this particular one, we're at 15 on the first skill damage being output. Again, the second setup here, we have all the way down here at turn 19 and 20. Now we have a 25% skill damage factor, but again, this is 21 seconds into the fight. And this is with a non-primary skill damage commander. You go down to turn 28, that's our first one, 35%. Turn 30 just hits 40%. So turn 29 is 35%. Turn 30 is when you actually hit your 40%. So again, on this particular build here with Richard CJ, your third skill cycle is going to get that 40%. But again, it still takes the same amount of time, whether you're generating rage really fast or whether you're generating rage really slow. The time is the same. It's how many skill cycles you can get off in between the first setup, the first turn, and the 30th turn. This is the second target that I targeted on this first set of battles. As you can see, I've got 88,928 troops, and the report triggered on both the previous battle report that I showed you and created a new battle report, which again, if we go to the battle log, it starts at 5% again. It restarts with no AoE, and I literally, as soon as it died, I dropped it on the next one. The next one was on top of me. I did that on purpose so that we would not lose that that percentage. Okay, so it would continue to fire off on the skill. The rage would continue to generate while you're doing it. So with this one, again, you have that this is the second barb that I hit as a single target hit from Richard CJ, and again, it starts over from scratch on the target, 5%, and now you got to wait all the way until turn 29 and 30 to get your 40%, and now you're back in the running and you're starting to kill this target as well. So that's how that works, guys. I can't tell you how disappointing that is. Now, let me show you the one that I did with Guan. So as we go through this, right, Guan obviously is going to generate rage a lot faster. I used a full 330,000 troops on this as well, so it's going to go a lot quicker. But I wanted to show you what happens when you use an AoE versus when you use a single target. So we go over here to the battle log. We have the target taking damage all the way down to nothing. We're at 41%, but only 35% is from the sacrifice skill. We have clarity giving an additional 6%, bringing us to 41%. So again, with an actual normal battle march, right, we didn't even make it to the 30-second mark. And that's with me just sitting there and watching it. We're not talking about, you know, things moving around the map or, you know, different movements happening with the enemy versus us. We're not even talking about real world battle. I'm just talking even just the normal testing that we have access to here to show you that even with perfect case scenarios, sometimes you don't even get to that 40% skill damage bonus that you're looking for from the sacrifice skill. Now let's go to the next section on this battle report, battle log, and here we go. All right, so here we have the actual third turn. I know it says 15%, but this is where we were at when the AoE hit both targets. So the first target that got hit was the main target, right? As I was tapping, and by the time that AoE casted from Guan, it was about 10 seconds in or so. And again, at that point, the original battle was at 15% bonus from sacrifice. So that bonus that you got from the first initial target on the hit swipes over to the second target, which is what we're looking at right now. And that's what you're seeing right here is it's starting at 15 and going up from there. And again, you're going to see that we're still not going to get to 40% for quite some time, but it still helps to start earlier. So skill damage is at 40 there. Skill damage is at 35. 35. 40. So we got to 40 on turn 22, which means to me that it took Guan about 8 seconds to cast his first skill. And I guarantee you, if we go over to the battle log, it'll say on turn 8, Guan casted his first skill, which is again that 30-second number. So 22 plus 8 is 30 seconds. So that's what I'm trying to get through to you guys. Now, again, the reason I say the best way to use CJs with AoE is because you'll see more of the benefit from that damage bonus with AoE because you're going to be hitting multiple targets. And Guan, for instance, will get that bonus even though CJ won't be really hitting multiple targets because he's a single target commander. Guan will get the damage bonus. That's part of his march. So Guan will get the 15% skill damage bonus and start swiping AoEs. Now again, this is also great if you can get it to that 40%, which again is very hard to do while not getting instantly swarmed down. If you can, though, you're going to absolutely start wrecking stuff. This is really going to turn into a Guan YSG kind of march, but instead of having that secondary AoE with Guan, you're going to have that single target, which we talked about on other videos. Sometimes that's actually better than having an AoE. Do you want to have kills or do you want to have damage? That's what I'm talking about, okay? So again, 4th skill for CJ. There's 2 components like we talked about. We have the 40% skill damage bonus after 30 seconds. We also have the 15% march speed bonus. Okay, so I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe, you know, with the typical fastest march speeds for infantry, maybe this will help me kind of track down and chase down some cav march, for instance, or you know, try to get somebody that's trying to run away. 300 damage factor bonus for 30% or less troops available on this first skill. I'm trying to correlate. I'm like, okay, well, you're wanting to kill targets that are lower. Most of the targets that are lower are going to be running back or trying to go away, right? So I'm like, okay, well, maybe with this 15% march speed, if we pair him up with the fastest infantry commander in the game, with one of the fastest talent infantry builds in the game, then maybe we can go ahead and track down and catch some of these guys, and maybe this will make a little bit more sense. Well, here's some footage on me chasing down a Saladin William, which is again one of the most premier Cav commander combos on the field right now is Saladin William. You can also try XY William, but again it's even worse. So again, you've got this guy trying to catch Saladin William. Check this out. So again, what's the summary? What's the conclusion from this video? Really, what am I trying to say? Right after all that yammering and all that data and all the stuff that I just showed you. Well, to me, CJ is a little underwhelming. And when I say a little, it's a lot. You're talking about a brand new, latest season of Conquest commander. We talked about all the reasons why his skills, while on paper look kind of decent, in practice aren't really that measurable. They're not really usable the way that they are written in the game. You have commanders like, for instance, like, okay, so we have the second skill here, 40% infantry attack. That's nice. Okay, well, Alex has a healing effect reduction. He's got a third skill, a 30% infantry attack. And the fourth skill, he's got another 40% attack whenever he's not shielded, and a 30% defense bonus if he is shielded. And I mean, he's got all these other things. This is an older commander. Like this is why Alex is so good. Okay, this may be a little bit more why Alex is so good versus why CJ isn't as good. But still, I mean, this is what you're comparing to. I mean, if you're going to bring commanders on the field to fight, well, they need to be better than the other commanders that you have access to, or there's no point in doing it. And that's kind of where I'm at with CJ is there's better commanders that are available earlier that most people have maxed, or at least 5511 or something, where I think that they would be much better to use than CJ. I mean, we're even talking about Guan, right? Which I've said my praise and my worry about Guan. He's super squishy. You know, he doesn't necessarily bring anything special to the table except for his first skill being an AoE silence. But again, look at this, 2000 damage factor, AoE, right? And again, we talked about AoE and all that stuff versus direct damage and what you're trying to do into the game. But then you have a secondary skill damage here directly on top of the actual target, that if you have an AoE, there's a 50% chance to trigger even more skill damage. Well, guess what? They also have a 30% increased attack and a 15% march speed on Guan. He also gets his own little heal if he leaves battle. You have a second skill here, but this is mainly for rallies. And then finally, the expertise, which is kind of a joke because it never procs, because it's situational at best. It does proc, but it's situational at best. Okay, I would still rather have Guan than CJ. And again, you can even use Guan at 5-something-5-5 or 5-something-something-5 and be just as effective, if not more effective, than a fully maxed CJ, in my opinion. There's just more options for you on the field. Now, is he better than Leonidas? Yeah, probably. Leonidas is really situational to the extreme. Without a Guan, huddling Leonidas around, it's kind of a pointless commander. I would say that Guan and Alex and even Harold, again, are far more beneficial on the battlefield than a CJ. He doesn't bring anything special to the table. He doesn't do anything particularly well. And the thing that his skills, this is supposed to be special. This is supposed to be special. So is this. This is supposed to be special. It's not. It's not special. In real world situations, it's not special. It's not special. You'll have a much better chance of surviving and causing way more damage with other infantry commanders that are much older than CJ. So I hope I've explained myself well enough. I hope you have made it through all the way to this point. I know it's been me yammering about it. I wanted to put this information out. I wanted to say my opinion on him because people are asking me, well, what about Alex CJ? What about Guan CJ? What about Charles CJ? What about Richard CJ? You can, but there's better. There's better out there. There's better out there. So to me, whenever we start using CJ as a part of our pairings in Commander Spotlight, to me, his ceiling is A-class. It's not S-class. I would much rather have an Alex or a Guan, or both, out on the field than a CJ, and pairing them up with a Herald, right, or a Leo, or something like that, versus using CJ the way he currently sits, because in real-world situations, he just doesn't stack up to what's already out there. I hope you've enjoyed the video. See you guys next time. Cheers. Have a good one.